How's it going, my friends? Thank you for all of those that contacted me last week. That was really good to hear from you folks. I enjoyed all the comments and getting back to everyone. This week's episode is going to be awesome. We're going to be talking about a murder case, and this murder case has it all. There's like criminal law issues, constitutional law issues, family law, probate, everything in this one murder. So it's going to be a very interesting episode. And just for the heck of it, you'll also learn a lot about those areas of law. We have a young Kouri Richins. She is being accused of killing her husband, Eric Richins. And it was last March 2020, and the Utah police allege that the way she killed him was she made him a Moscow mule. Have you ever had one of those, Mateos? A Moscow mule? They were, guess where it was invented? No. In the United States. It just happened to be called a Moscow mule because it has a lot of vodka in it and ginger beer. And it's supposed to be served in a copper cup because the copper takes the cold better and it keeps it colder. While you're holding it, it'll also be cold. Anyway, so she served him a Moscow mule, and it had more than a mule in it. It had 5 times the dosage of fentanyl that could kill somebody. And sure enough, it killed her husband. And this is the police are alleging that she slipped in that fentanyl and killed him in March 2022. Obviously, she denies the whole thing, right? Now let's go over, the setup and why they're alleging this and why she's alleging she didn't do it, okay? So they were married for about 10 years, 9 years to be, closer to about a little over 9 years. They were married. And this was Eric Richins' second marriage. At the time of the marriage, he was 30 years old and she was 22, okay? And that's significant because this was, like I said, it was a second marriage, and he had already built up. By the time he was 30, he was already a millionaire, and this was like of the stuff that he did. I am so proud. Well, other than the fact that what happened, but he was doing well, and I guess he learned a lot from his first divorce because he signed and he drafted a prenup agreement. So I told you there's going to be a lot of family law too here. The prenup, the lawyers call this the premarital agreement, but commonly known as the prenup, okay, like prenuptial agreement. And in that agreement, it's very clear, this was drafted in June 2013. In it, I have it here. I have a copy of the whole thing. Now, what is going on here is he already purchased a house in his name the previous year. The house, he only purchased it for $400,000, and now it's worth about $2 million. And he also had a business with one partner named Kouri. The business was worth about $5 million. They were stonemasons, so they had a stonemasonry company, and it was worth about $5 million, and it had a lot of inventory with it as well. And here, it is very important to note in the prenup agreement, what it states here is that business is his freaking business, all right? She doesn't get even a rock from that business, all right? It's all his business. And it also states that if it improves during the marriage, it is still his. All of the income he makes from that business is his separate property. And she had nothing at the time. So everything here in the prenup agreement is in his benefit, so to speak, because he's making sure that she signs off that she's not getting anything, and all of this is his separate property. And even the income from it is separate property. Now, interestingly, he did not put the house, like he didn't in the prenup agreement. There is a rule in prenup agreements that you have to list the property that you are trying to, let's say, protect from the other side, right? He did not list the house. He only listed the business. And I know why, because at the time, the house, had a mortgage, and the house wasn't worth that much, especially relative to the business. Do you see what I'm saying? So he was more interested in protecting the business than he was the house. So that's the prenuptial agreement, and that was signed, and then they got married. Now, keep in mind here, this is 10 years ago. So during that time period in their 10 years, they had 3 children. They had 3 children, and then things got a little dicey around 2020. They were arguing over finances, which, oh man, back in the day, I did a lot of family law when I was a lot younger and dumber, because it's the most emotional type of law to do, right? Anyway, I used to always say that the number one rule or the number one cause of divorce is money, and it's not just like people that make no money, it's people that make a lot of money and they argue over it. So in 2020, he was already seeing signs that this isn't working out, blah, blah, blah. And then what he did, this is really important because it goes, in terms of the case and the motives and all that good stuff. He then moved the house. I always love saying he moved the house. He is a stonemason, so maybe no, he didn't move it that way. The title was in his name. He then he started a trust, and then he put the house in the trust's name. And so this is a good opportunity for me to just give you a very quick rundown of what the heck I'm talking about. When somebody they set up a trust, they usually call it like a living trust. Oh, no pun intended in this case, okay? A living trust here. What it means is that it's going, like you put the property in the trust, and then you specify, because he has 3 kids, right? So you specify, okay, if I pass away while the kids are minors, he put in the trust, I want my sister Kathy to be the trustee. And that means that Kathy will be the one that handles the assets of the trust. Kathy will be the one that sells different things if it needs to be done. She'll make sure the bills are paid. She'll make sure the mortgage is good. The insurance is kept up to date and all that good stuff. She will be the trustee. That's the trustee is the person that takes care of everything. And it's important to have a trust, because if you have a trust, you can pick out who that will be, as opposed to if you don't have a trust and you have nothing, it's the court that will choose it. So it's better, obviously you want yourself to choose it, not the court. And then the beneficiaries just means who is the trustee going to take care of. And obviously here, the way he had it written was his 3 kids. He did have a provision in there that said if he does die while they are married, then everything will just go to the wife. Okay. Why he would write that? Probably because he knew he was going to get divorced. That's my guess. Or, just in case, the kids are still small, they're still married. Who knows? But that is how he does the trust. And that was in the year 2020. Now, as time went on, in February of 2022, according to the police, there was a confidential informant who states that she sold painkillers and fentanyl to our friend Kouri Richins in February 2022. Now, why the heck would she tell the police that? My guess is that they busted her. Actually, it's not my guess. What happened was they busted her for all sorts of stuff. And she came forward. A good way to get yourself out of trouble is to inform or rat on, whatever you want to call it, other people. So she came forward and she told the police, I sold fentanyl. One of my customers was right, Kouri Richins, and she purchased fentanyl. And then it just so happened that she purchased fentanyl right around the time her husband died of fentanyl. And here we go. So she purchased it in February. She first started with these painkillers like hydrocodone. Is that how you pronounce it? Hydrocodone? I don't know. I don't take it. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure. So she started with some painkillers. And there's a story that in like January or February of that year, she had made him a sandwich. And then later he got super sick. And then he told a friend of his, he said, I think my wife tried to poison me. Now, I want to put it on the record. If I ever die of very questionable circumstances, my wife killed me, okay? I want everyone to know that right now. If I die and it's questionable, wife, here she is. There's going to be a future mugshot, okay? She's the one that did it. All right. So he says to his friends, I think she tried to kill me. I didn't mention also evidence disputes. That if there is a trial, the defense attorney for Kouri will try to exclude that evidence, because that's pretty big evidence when you have the guy who died saying, I think she tried to kill me. Coincidentally, in O.J. Simpson's trial, same thing. Nicole had once said, I think he's going to kill me one day. And that was a dispute in terms of if that could become evidence. All right, so my gut feeling is that would probably not be evidence. Meaning it wouldn't come into a jury. Okay, that's my guess in terms of how that would rule. Okay, so he says that to a friend. Now, she was buying according to the police, she was buying these painkillers, right? And then she told the drug dealer, and I quote, this is what the drug dealer signed an affidavit saying, then Kouri Richins said, can you get me some of the stronger stuff? Can you get me the Michael Jackson stuff? All right. Now, what that means, she's not talking about a cool glove, okay, or cool socks. No, she's talking about some drugs. All right. Like the serious one, the big fentanyl one, right? That's what she ended up getting. And she bought then, a couple $1,000s almost worth of this fentanyl. And she bought it right before March 3, 2022. Then comes the big day, if you want to call it that. All right. So on the big day, again, what happened goes like this. She, according to her, now why she said this to the police, I'm not sure. All I could say is that every single defense attorney, you know what the number one advice from defense attorneys is? Shut the fudge up. Okay, that's always the advice. Because she told the police, yes, around 9 o'clock, I gave him a Moscow Mule drink. And then he had it, before he went to bed. And then I went to bed in one of the kids' rooms because they were having a night terror and da-da-da-da-da, right? And then when I'm pretending to be her. And then I woke up around 3 a.m. I went back to the master bedroom. And then he was really cold, Eric. And I noticed, he wasn't breathing. I tried to do CPR. He was barely breathing. So I made sure he was dead. No, I shouldn't say that. Okay. So, he wasn't breathing. I tried to do CPR. I really, and then I called 911 and they came over, right. And they pronounced him dead on the scene. So she had told the police, because when they were asking her, what was going on? What did he eat? What did he drink? Blah, blah, blah. And then she said, I made him this Moscow Mule. We should title this episode, No More Moscow Mules for You. What do you think?
That sounds like a killer Moscow Mule.
So she told the police that. Now, very shortly after that, okay, and when I say shortly, so that was March 3. On March 11, about like a week later, Kathy, who was the late Eric Richins' sister, she then opened a trust case. And now what that means is she wanted to take over all of the assets of everything. And Kouri was disputing it. So then Kathy just filed a lawsuit, but it's in probate court, but it's called a petition, not a lawsuit. But anyway, so she files a petition in the probate court so that she could become the trustee, meaning that she's going to take control of like the business and the house and all the bills and all that stuff, right? Kouri, 2 weeks later, filed an objection to that. So she didn't want her sister-in-law to become the trustee. So this is all happening within about 2-3 weeks of when Eric dies, okay? Then the autopsy report comes back. and it showed that he had a high fentanyl level. And then the police were able to, they got a search warrant to search the house, because once they had like a fentanyl thing, then they're like, okay, either it's going to be, if somebody slipped them fentanyl, or there's fentanyl in the house where there's small kids around. So they got a search warrant. They convinced the judge to get a search warrant. Now, that's an important constitutional law issue. They can't just go into her house and search everything. They either have to have a warrant or they have to have her permission. I bet you she would have just agreed, because a lot of times people think, if I tell the police they can't come here, or I tell the police I don't want to talk to them, then I'm going to look guilty, type of thing, right? A lot of people think that. So she probably would have agreed, but nonetheless, they went and got a search warrant. And then they asked her to come on in to the police station so we could ask a few questions. Here's some advice. Whenever the police say, come on in for some questions, if you are the killer, don't go and talk to them, because she then did that. And then everything was recorded. I've had a lot of clients, like whenever I see, this is what the transcript of the discussion between her and Detective Woody. Anytime there is this transcript, I look, I'm like, oh no, man, I'm going to read something pretty bad. And sure enough, I read something really bad, okay, in terms of for Kouri. So they asked her, what happened that night, what was going on. They asked her, did you ever notice him doing, fentanyl or other drugs or this and that? And she said, no, he drank a lot and he would have edibles, like marijuana edibles, and that was about it. And then they asked her, what about like computers and stuff in the house? We want to search that. Then she said, so Detective Woody, any kind of electronics, like, do you have a phone? She said, yeah, I do have my phone, da, 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 da. And he didn't even ask her what other electronics. She said, she just out of nowhere, while she was talking about it, there's an iPad, if it's at my house, it would be, this is the Kouri talking, and then she said to them, yeah, I have a laptop. I have a computer that I use. I'm giving you the short version. Now, why am I saying all of these things? Is because they found, they went and got all of these things. And there was a lot of really bad Google searches. I don't mean bad like what Mateo searches. I mean like criminally bad, okay? Like really, really bad. And it is almost impossible to prove. When they get a computer, it's so hard to prove who searched what, especially like my computer. My kids use it, my wife could use it. Sometimes I'll use hers, and my phone, like my kids will use my phone. So it's hard to show, like it's hard to prove who used the computer and who searched for what. The only thing that could make it easier is if she says, that's my computer and that's the one I always use and I only use it. Okay, did she say that?
That's what she said.
Yes. All right. Oh my God. I hope it wasn't recorded. It was recorded. I hope there's not a transcript of it. There's a transcript of it, right? So now let me just kind of walk you through some of the things that she had on her computer that she admitted was hers that she used. She searched things like, what is a Utah state prison like? What are the conditions in prison? She searched what happens to deleted messages on a phone and on a computer, because the confidential informant had said, like, we were texting each other. She searched, can police read iMessages, and how do police read messages of people? And this was all within the same month that, within a month or two after Eric Richins died. She said, what are some of the things I need to know about Utah prisons? Then she put, there was a lot of life insurance money on Eric Richins. And it just so happened there was like several months before she bought like another life insurance policy. And she was searching, how long does it take to get paid on life insurance benefit? Okay, that's not the best thing to search, right? I mean, come on. She would have been better off doing the Mateo searches than what she was actually searching. You know that? Okay, cause of death. She was like looking at like, how do they determine cause of deaths? she was searching, I cannot just go over all of these because it's just too much, right? Anyway, okay. So if I went through all of it, she was searching like fentanyl and how it works and how it doesn't work and all that. Now, a lot of these could be explained, right? I mean, a lot of them could be explained. It just, the way it works with evidence is that the more evidence a jury hears, like if they hear about all the searches and everything, right? The more evidence the jury hears, the more it's gonna be bad, right? Like my evidence professor in law school said it's like a brick. Every piece of evidence is like a brick, okay? And if you have enough bricks, you got yourself a wall, okay? And if you don't have enough bricks, you don't have a wall, right? And so the Google searches, what do you think? Big evidence? You think so? On a scale of 1 to 10. 3? Oh, 6. Okay, I didn't see the other hand just yet. 6, okay. I think, yeah, maybe 6. I mean, I search just millions of weird things myself. And so, I think a jury, that is a piece of evidence, a very big piece of evidence. I think the bigger piece of evidence is the confidential informant that says, I was communicating with her. But get this, one of the things I learned is if you delete your messages on a phone, and what happened was the police say that Kouri deleted these messages that she had with the informant on the phone. And then if the other person deleted it, it is almost impossible for them to get those messages. So because the police tried to get those, that would have been awesome evidence, right? They couldn't get any of that evidence. It just didn't exist on her phone. It didn't exist on the other person's phone. So the confidential informant, it's just her word that is, I sold her the drugs on these dates and these times, and this is where I met her, and this is how she would pay me. And the payment exchanges were weird. They kind of said, okay, go to this house. There'll be an envelope for $900 and put the fentanyl in the envelope. So most of the exchanges were not like, what are the person-to-person exchanges, a drug transaction in the good old days. Although there was one that they said was a person-to-person drug transaction. Okay, a year goes by. By the way, my biggest pet peeve in this galaxy is why my printer always wants to print on double sides. It drives me freaking... If somebody could tell me how that could never happen again, I would be truly thankful. Okay, so a year goes by, and then on May 8, 2023, so this is actually 14 months after Eric dies, that the state of Utah files its formal criminal complaint against Kouri Richins, okay? So they filed. So this is the murder charges, and in the murder charge, what's funny is in addition to the murder charges, they're also because she put the fentanyl supposedly in his drink. So they're also saying that she bought drugs and she distributed drugs and she, is a drug dealer, right? Like, and she murdered the murderer too. The murder one is the big one. I think the other ones are not as bad, but sometimes as a prosecutor, it's like, okay, we can't prove that she murdered him, but at least we prove she bought fentanyl. So we got something on her, right? Anyway, those were the lower charges, we called it. Okay, so in this one, again, like I said, it just kind of describes everything that I, stated about how, allegedly she gave him this drink, that he drank it, that then he died. And then the biggest detail here is they kind of go over the searches. And then the biggest detail is that confidential informant. Now, the confidential informant is she's not going to be the best witness for the prosecutor because she's a fucking drug dealer, right? Okay, she's not, I don't think the jury's going to like dig her that much. And she got out of like other trouble just by saying, I was selling fentanyl to Kouri Richins. Okay, so I don't know that one. I think it's going to be big evidence, but like I said, it's not. Then now I'm gonna just say one thing about Kouri Richins. She's a freaking gangster. After her husband died, she wrote a book, a children's book about how to deal with grief. Okay, and it was kind of like helping children deal with grief. She made a bunch of money on that book. Isn't that crazy? And just to prove that she's a true gangster, remember I told you about the trust and he moved all the assets to the trust and everything? Well, his sister is managing the trust, and then his sister sold Eric's portion of the business, the stonemasonry business, for $2 million. She sold it to the partner. And then, so she's taking control of all the assets. Now, on March 8th, Kouri was arrested. She's been in jail since then because she didn't make bail. Like, she wasn't allowed to make bail. And even from jail in June, she filed a civil lawsuit against the sister-in-law. Isn't that gangster? Like, while she's in jail, she's sued. In that civil lawsuit, I have remember, let's make the news things, the big thing. Run-a-by-her lawyer has obtained a copy of the lawsuit filed by Kouri Richins. Can we make that sound good, you think? Okay, all right. So in the lawsuit, Kouri Richins is saying, well, the house is in Eric's name and was in Eric's name, and Eric transferred it. However, marital property law should give me half of the value of the house because he purchased it shortly before we got married, and the mortgage payments were made from our joint account, and just out of equitable distribution, I should get half the house, or at least half of the value of the appreciation since we've been married. Now, Utah is not a community property state. The community property states like California and Texas, those are the big ones, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, those states are what's called community property states, which means that anything made during the marriage is 50-50. And the reason why they're community property states is Spain, the country of Spain, had control of those areas. So when they became states, they kept the Spanish law for marital divorce law, so they kept community property. The other states, like, all the other states, with the exception of Alaska, Hawaii, they were British. Okay, so they took over like the British law. Oregon, I did not know this until like years ago, that Oregon, they took the British too because the British had a little thing in Oregon. So it wasn't, I thought the Spain had the whole West Coast. Anyway, so those are the community property states. The reason why that's important, Utah is not a community property state. So that means that the judge in a divorce case, and they handle a death like a divorce case in terms of dividing assets, the judge has a lot of discretion in terms of, well, what is fair? And believe it or not, the ordinary in California, let's say like the one spouse, like in this case, in a lot of cases, like the husband makes, a lot of the money, the wife takes care of the 3 kids here. In California, anything the husband made throughout the marriage is 50-50. It's community property. But in Utah and other states, it's not necessarily 50-50. Usually it's actually, they say, like about 60-40, sometimes 65, like 2/3 and 1/3, which is a lot better for the income producing spouse, okay? It's just, and the judge has a lot of discretion here. If the judge thinks she killed him, I don't think she'll get anything, but she is filing that lawsuit. I freaking love the fact that she's in jail on murder and she's filing a lawsuit for money. I mean, this is gangster. Okay, finally, she had a bail hearing last week. So this is the deal. The 8th Amendment states that the excessive bail shall not be required. That is very clear in the 8th Amendment. And what that means is the court has to give people bail, and it can't be that high. It can't be excessive. It's unfortunate, and there's a lot of states that are trying to change this. If somebody is broke, they have no money, they can't make a $50,000 bail or $100,000 bail because they don't have that money, right? And so they just can't get it. What sucks is the freaking bail bondsman, they don't even put that money up. They get all this money from the person, and they don't even put any money to get them out. They just give the government their word, basically, their bond, that this guy will make it to court. Anyhow, the judge in this case there was a hearing to set her bail. And the way it works in every state, if it's a murder charge, and if the judge thinks that the person is still dangerous to society, the judge can deny bail. and that is not considered a violation of the Constitution. So if it's a murder case, and if the judge thinks the person's still dangerous, like if it's like a DUI case, like the Raiders, Henry Ruggs killed somebody drinking and driving. He was out on bail because the judge said, just don't drive, damn it. But it wasn't like an intentional killing, and so the judge deemed him not dangerous enough, to not give bail. In her case, the judge denied bail, and then they had a hearing so that she could get bail. In that hearing, they questioned a few witnesses, like the detective, and it was pretty clear, there was enough evidence that points to her as the killer, enough evidence to at least deny bail. So that is a constitutional issue. She could appeal that. If I was her lawyer, I would say she's not going to win, all right? Because when you're on trial for murder, unless it's like an accidental murder or if it was a murder from 20 years ago and you've been clean the whole time, you are not going to get bail. If this case goes to trial, what do you think? Guilty or not guilty? Oh, Mateo's saying guilty. Oh, you guys say not guilty? Oh, guilty. Oh, this is thumbs down is guilty. Sorry. Everyone here says she's guilty. God, man. You know what? I don't think there's enough evidence to get a guilty verdict. I don't think so. Because it's just, I don't know, man. I think she did it, but I just don't think there's enough to get a guilty verdict. I mean, if the police get more evidence or something like that, I think that'll be good. But let's see. We'll bet lunch. All right, in about a year from now, we'll know. Hey, today is June 21, 2023. I am going on record. She will not be found guilty of murder, is my guess. Zeke and Mateo are betting me, saying that she will. All right, good stuff. See you next week.